So, Claire, good morning.
Good morning, Pete. Thanks for taking my call.
I have a feeling I know what you're going to talk about.
Well, yes, it's the ferry again. Sad, isn't it?
It is.
Pete, I won't get in too much about the family stranded, appointments missed, work missed, trucks there for a week with produce spoiled, and business store shelves bare, because I think you've heard all that. I was really pleased that we were
people not being able to visit their dying parents, etc. We understand. I mean, there's a zillion stories on any transportation point, but these are all very real and very stressing and not good.
Very real, Pete, and I've spent my entire weekend again, Saturday, Sunday, looking at flight costs for people, because to travel by air too without subsidy is just so astronomical. Last Monday, I don't often fly from the coast to St. Anthony anymore. Usually it's either Blanc or Goose, but just to get from my community in Charlottetown to St. Anthony was $450 one way. The average person can't pay $900 for a return flight, Pete. They just can't. So many sad stories, and I've been hearing the calls. I empathize. My heart goes out to them, but I want to talk about the RFP. In June 13, I was elected. So last winter was the first winter that I really had, firsthand dealing with the ice issues. And that's what caused me to get in and start digging into the meat of the RFP for the new vessel coming on. Because God knows, we got this 40-year-old boat. We're long behind waiting on a new ship. That we're about to be locked into a new boat with a 15-year contract, possible renewal, maybe for up to 25 years. 25 years, I believe that just drives home the fact that we have to get this right. So last year, I felt that the season proved beyond any reasonable doubt that any new vessel serving the Strait of Belle Isle would require significant ice-breaking capacity and increased horsepower. And a new RFP that was issued for the ferry service, from what we could see, failed to designate the ice-breaking capacity or increased horsepower. So
are you serious?
Pete?
It doesn't say anything about the ice-breaking capacity?
Well, I'm going to talk about that now. June 3rd, Hansard is the official record in the House of Assembly. And, Pete, it was June the 3rd. I looked it up last night after I got home from Cartwright and seeing all the things continuing in social media. I said, I got to go back and see what the questions were I asked. It was June the 3rd that I asked the minister. I said, and it was then Minister McGrath, I said, knowing the challenges with ice facing the present ferry service, because, Pete, in June of this year, the ferry was still not crossing. June 3rd, the day I asked, the ferry didn't cross because of ice. So I said to the minister, why did the RFP go forward without specifying A1 ice class and an increased horsepower from what we have now? Because, Pete,
and the minister said,
who wants a nice seat to sit in if we're spending $70 or $80 million of taxpayers' money and we're still not correcting this terrible, terrible problem we have with our main transportation link severed?
What was the minister's response?
Well, like most question periods, such laxy-daisy answers, right? He came back, and I encourage people to read it for themselves. I'm posting the link in my social media today. He said, I asked a member that she read the RFP again. In the RFP, it states that the vessel will be icebreaker class. Right in the RFP, so I'm not sure what she's talking about. I went back to him, and I said, Minister, it's not specific. I am saying it needs to be at least a medium. It needs to be an A1 ice class, because we're here in June and the ferry is not crossing. Also, Pete, the Apollo, I believe, has 9,000 horsepower. This RFP stipulates that the ship has to be 8,000 or higher. So then I went on to say to the minister, we could end up with less. Then he came back and attacked me and said, I'm glad that we on this side of the House have more faith in the business people in the community than the member across the way. Now, that's just foolishness. I wasn't questioning the business people, but if you put an RFP out there and you're saying that the boat can be 8,000 or higher, people are going to go and work with what they got, right? He got up and he talked about the ferry replacement strategy that they have in place, and that they're aware of the conditions, and that he felt that the new boat coming on would be addressing all of that. and a very sad situation, I believe. Now I'm going to go back to in the fall. I mean, this closed last May. The RFP closed. I asked the questions in June. Back in the fall, I had 5 mayors in from the Labrador Straits. I was coordinating, helping them set up a number of meetings. One of the meetings was with the Minister of Transportation, now a new minister again, because they keep changing quite frequently in there. Yeah. And during that meeting, one of the questions was, when is the new boat going to be announced? Because this boat is coming on in 2016. There is a lot of concern that the longer it gets delayed in her being announced, she may not be ready to come on in 2016, because whoever gets the contract has to go and get this new boat, which the tender stipulates has to be 2010 or newer. At that time, we were told the boat would be announced before the end of the year. December came and went. There was nothing. I started making contact again in January. I was told before the end of January. We're now March. In February, I followed up, and I was told very soon. This morning, Pete, the minister was on Labrador Morning, and he as good as admitted that the new boat that's coming is no good for those conditions. So, I mean, it's not good enough, Pete.
Yeah, very frustrating. I can just imagine. Now, listen, we don't have any time left, so it's not fair to ask you this, but I'm going to ask it because somebody asked me to ask you this. What do you say to folks who say that this problem exposes a reality that you're living in a place that's no longer sustainable under today's, fiscal reality? This comes up every time. There's always somebody who's going to say, well, you know what? You shouldn't be there in the first place, so then you wouldn't have anything to complain about.
Pete, I welcome those questions wholeheartedly. Ask me.
Really?
We're not talking about a small community, Fogo, Bill Island, the boat goes down, they got a chopper flying. We're talking about the whole of Labrador, the big land, a land so rich in resources, so poor in services.
Wait, are you implying that Fogo wouldn't have an argument because
No. Pete,
I didn't want to leave that impression with people if that's not the one you meant to leave.
More power to them. They need service. The business of government is to provide a service to the people of the province. And let me give you one example, Pete. Yep. If we had a boat in the Strait of Belle Isle, like is taking the resources out of Voisey's Bay all winter long, far more north than we are here on the coast in the Straits, if we had a ship that was like taking the resources out, you and I would not be having this conversation.